It's been said that my generation is too devoted to hanging on to our childhoods, which is probably true. Granted, we've had some help with that, and given the increasingly bleak-looking state of the future, maybe we're just well prepared. But in any case, last week reality popped up to remind us that nothing really lasts forever, with the news that Nintendo Power magazine would be ceasing publication. This December, one of the longest-lived touchstones of gaming culture will be gone, just like that. I'll admit, this makes me pretty damn sad. Yeah, print gaming magazines have been rendered somewhat irrelevant by the arrival of the internet, and yeah, I hadn't actually subscribed to it for a long time, but still, yeah, it feels like a big deal. This was the first magazine I ever subscribed to, and it was probably the most regular reading I was doing as an 8-year-old, and I don't know how things were for everyone else, but I probably wouldn't still be a gamer, certainly not as big of one, without having had Nintendo Power and the other gaming magazines that followed, yes, to key me into the existence of games I otherwise might not have heard of. Back before the internet, if they didn't advertise a game where you happened to see it, it might as well not have existed. Hell, it's been persuasively argued that Western gamers embracing JRPGs was owed overwhelmingly to Nintendo Power, giving away a copy of the first Dragon Warrior to subscribers. More importantly, it gave me my first real sense that there was such a thing as a gamer culture, that there were other people out there who loved video games as much as I did. Speaking of which, I got my first connection to the internet so I could use the Nintendo Power channel on America Online. Before that, I wasn't really a big computer guy. Without that, I probably wouldn't have had my eyes open to an even bigger online gamer culture, and I probably wouldn't be doing this for a living. I mean, wow, when you think about it, I own Nintendo Power a lot. So why does some small part of me feel like I shouldn't feel bummed about this? Well, because it was a commercial, basically. I mean, you have to be honest about these things. Nintendo Power was, in the end, a marketing tool. In what ended up being a stroke of genius, Nintendo of America knew that a gaming culture was going to happen, and cannily got out in front of it with a glossy, well-produced publication that, while it did provide a lot of news, information, humor, maps, codes, and gaming tricks that could make a subscriber the oracle of their local playground, it was mainly dedicated to solidifying the Nintendo brand in the eyes of impressionable youngsters. This is part of a much, much broader hand-wringing about the evolving culture of Generation X and Y, and their relationship with the consumer culture. We are, so goes the story, the first two generations of Americans anyway, whose childhood pop culture touchstones came overwhelmingly in commercial form. Like, literally, in the form of commercials. Some history is required here. In 1946, the Federal Communications Commission published a legal document called the Blue Book that, among other things, placed limits on the amount of advertising that could be included on radio and television, and the form that advertising could take. Advertising aimed at children remained of particular concern, and in the 60s and 70s, an activist group called Action for Children's Television successfully campaigned for even more restrictive laws against blurring the line between entertainment and marketing, based on the premise that young children lacked an adult's ability to distinguish between entertainment for the imparting of a sincere message and entertainment for the selling of a product. I'm not entirely certain I agree with the calculus there, but in terms of trying to prevent kids from growing up into brainless corporate zombies, I think their hearts were probably in the right place. Either way, it didn't last. In 1981, America elected Ronald Reagan president, and one of the big animating ideas of Reagan's administration was that they could supercharge the United States economy through what they called deregulation, also known as let's let corporate America do pretty much whatever the hell it wants to. Anyway, one of the areas where Reagan's deregulation agenda was most pronounced was drastically reducing the commercial restricting powers of the FCC. Now, TV shows aimed at grown-ups mostly resisted becoming more blatantly commercial, even though they now could, because it was assumed adults would notice it and be turned off. Kids' TV, on the other hand, I don't need to tell you what happened. When toy companies found out they could produce shows that existed only to market lines of dolls and action figures, they did. And as a result, a huge amount of stories and characters held as beloved by 2 generations and counting of children were actually thinly disguised infomercials made to sell them more toys. I understand why people look at this as kind of a bad thing. I mean, the idea of someone's childhood hero being some branded product is more than a little unsettling in some respects, but I do think some of the laments are overblown. For one thing, the idea that children's entertainment was never about selling something before doesn't really hold water. Stories for kids have always been the product of adults trying to influence the behaviors of the young. Is there really that much daylight between He-Man encouraging 80s kids to prop up the economy by buying more toys, and, say, Cinderella, Snow White, etc. encouraging kids to prop up the basis of their societies by embracing and conforming to the gender, class, and family roles of the era's status quo? There's some daylight, yeah, but I don't know if it's much. Also, children are smarter and think more deeply than we give them credit for. Teenagers, not so much, but children, definitely. And while my generation may have embraced commercial icons like, say, the Transformers, we weren't necessarily ruled by them. Case in point, when the Transformers movie killed off Optimus Prime, it wasn't really for dramatic effect, it was just more marketing. Hey kids, that guy's over, now it's about this guy, you like this guy now, go buy all the new stuff. Well, that didn't work. Kids, by and large, didn't like that new guy. They were pissed. Hasbro and Sunbow got angry letters, not just from kids, but from their parents, and eventually they had to bring Optimus Prime back. So the marketing had worked in one sense. The kids were really invested in the property, but if the goal had been to turn them into loyal, unquestioning drones of the corporation, well, that goal clearly kind of failed. Not to indulge in cliches, but the kids are alright. So, no, I don't think it's a national tragedy that some of our imaginary heroes were just made to sell us something, and as such, I don't think it's wrong at all for us to be wistful about the passing of something like Nintendo Power. What it was isn't really as important as what it meant to you, and this meant something to me. Goodbye, my old friend. I'm Bob, and that's the big picture.